Matt Maher is the founder and CEO of M7 Innovations, an independent research and advisory firm that sits at the intersection of advanced technology, behavioral evolution, and business transformation. With that, Matt, we're thrilled to have you at the live event today, and I am very much looking forward to hearing your presentation.
Thank you so much, Michael, and thank you everyone for being here. Very excited to take the next 15 minutes or so to talk about some big predictions and where we are right now in the world of AI. So let's jump right into it. I'm going to start with an anecdote. Just last week, I was at Massachusetts Institute of Technology, of which we have a partnership with, and there was an anecdote there from one of the head scientists that really stuck with me. And basically, they said, while we're worrying about superintelligence, I am terrified about super stupidity, of what happens when we delegate our cognitive loads and the world has AI essentially everywhere. So what I'm going to do today is talk about where we are right now with AI and what it means for brands and businesses and how to navigate this space. So I like to zoom out and start with where we are in the timeline. And 2024 felt like the year of AI aspiration, the amazing things that we believed AI could do to our work, to our content, to our lives, to our communication, but it was a very aspirational year. 2025, I would argue, was the year of action. Many of the Fortune 1000s started to implement initiatives and projects and different ways to try to see if AI would create all these efficiencies, all these cost savings. We are now in 2026 in what I would call the year of assessment, of really trying to understand, am I getting a good ROI, return on investment, for all the money we're spending, for the cuts we may make, for the efficiencies that we're trying to lay out. And that's where we are right now, trying to measure if it's worth it. Because this space moves so fast, you might as well shake a magic 8-ball for next year to see where we might end up. I think it'll be in a space of more assessment and activation. But again, it's hard to really predict because the space is moving so fast. But there is one thing to be true, and it is that I believe we are reaching what I would call a technological parity when it comes to all things artificial intelligence. And the best way to describe this, of which something I had a discussion with certain PhDs and researchers at MIT about this concept of the elimination of variance. So let me explain what exactly that means. And the metaphor I will use will take us to the Olympics in sport. So what you're actually looking at is the 100-meter dash in the 1896 Olympics at Athens. And it was a very exciting race. The U.S. came out on top. Thomas Burke actually came in first place. He ran a 11-second or 11.8-second 100-meter dash. In second place was an athlete from Germany. He ran it in 12.75 seconds. And third was a Hungarian who ran it in 13.6 seconds. So decently close, all within about a second of each other. And that was in 1896. Now let's fast forward to the most recent Olympics. And you can see here, U.S. won again. Very exciting. Noah Lyles edged out Jamaica at 9.784 seconds, even though Kashane Thompson came in at 9.789 seconds. So basically a thousandth of a second was the variance that defeated one runner from the next. And if you even lay out the last 12 years of the Olympics, we've only increased the speed of the 100-meter dash by about 100th of a second every 4 years. And what that starts to show you is that when you are completely optimized and you spend 4 years training and eating and doing everything to be the most optimized and efficient version of yourself, variance starts to dissipate. It starts to actually collapse. And that in 12-year spans, we're talking about hundredths of a second that separate, two different athletes out of the 7+ billion people in our world. And that's because there's an elimination of variance. And that's exactly what I feel is happening in the AI arms race. That in 2023, when ChatGPT came out, it was like the 1896 Olympics in Athens, and everyone was kind of jockeying for position. And all of a sudden, OpenAI was out in front, and then Google just got ahead. But now we feel more like the most recent Olympics, where we're pretty much all at the same pace, that it doesn't matter which one or which large language model or AI provider you choose, they're all pretty much great because we've essentially eliminated any variance. So I'll take a few minutes here to break down what that means, how variance has been completely collapsed from large language models to image generation to agentic shopping and commerce, and all the way to everything we could create or generate in an era of generative AI. So starting with large language models, if you think of Anthropic's Claude versus OpenAI's ChatGPT versus Google's Gemini, I actually pulled these numbers this morning because these update so quickly. And the main note is don't look exactly at the numbers, look at the difference between the numbers, that they're all basically in the same realm of each other. Meaning if you're using Gemini or Claude Sonnet 4.6 or GPT 5.5, you're not going to have drastic differences in essential performance. They're basically all at parity. They're all great choices. If you move over to, let's say, video generation, which has come so far, so fast, really shaken up Hollywood, shaken up, Netflix and the streamers of the world, every average person could use Gemini's Nano Banana, or I could use OpenAI's Sora, or I could use Claude's video generation, and it can create stunning visuals that are all not identical, but basically the same in terms of the quality, the production value. We've hit parity in terms of video generation. You're moving over to agentic browsing, which is essentially the next step of digital commerce. McKinsey now puts agentic commerce to be around $3 to $5 trillion of our global economy by 2030. So the ability for these agents to go out and actually purchase on our behalf, there's not really a winner. ChatGPT has Atlas, Perplexity has Comet. There's startup companies. Gemini is starting to show up in Chrome browsers. So again, there's not a winner. It's just agentic browsing is going to rise. And then last but not least, just looking at a full zoomed out, the gap is so narrowed now that it's really more about convenience and marketing to really understand what we should be leaning into. And I think that's where I'll now get to the next slide and spend a couple minutes on just talking how brands can essentially prepare and think of this new world. The most important thing to note, and I get this from so many different clients, to say, okay, is this just a phase? Is this just something that's going to come and pass like the metaverse or like NFTs in Web3? And I always look at mass adoption of how many people are actually in this space right now. And I bring this up because it shows you we are hitting mass adoption. So these are numbers of the monthly MAU, monthly active users, or WAU, weekly active users. That's how OpenAI measures, or DAU, daily active users of these tools. So here I'm focusing on these AI models that can create text, they can create images, they can create video. So Meta and Meta AI, that company touches 3.53 billion people every single day. Over 1 billion people are interacting with Meta AI every single day. When it comes to Microsoft, which owns Bing and Microsoft Copilot, we're over 1 billion people every month using Microsoft Copilot and Microsoft's AI. ChatGPT, obviously from OpenAI, has crested over 900 million weekly active users. They're getting closer to 1 billion, and they're seeing about 2.5 billion prompts every single day. Google is still number one in search. Just at the earnings report last week, they said search volume is at an all-time high, and there are over 500 million users on Gemini using that large language model for search as well. And even the younger players, DeepSeek, Perplexity, they're still big and growing. And Claude's number, I actually even have to update because that has increased more and more as it's become more consumer facing. So the argument is that we have not replaced search. It is just enhanced and it's evolving, and we have hit mass adoption. So a long-winded way to say this is real. This is very real, and brands, marketers, and us as humans have to start to plan for an inevitable future that is happening at this exact moment, because everyone is using large language models and image generation. It is basically a new wild west of media, of communication, of our entire internet. So that's why we need to plan for that future. And here are kind of three, what I'd say, major key takeaways that I'd want to hit on as I kind of round out how we can essentially prepare for this future. So number one is that there isn't really a differentiator now. If you are a CFO, you're running a small business or a large business, you're part of that leadership team, placing a bet on we're going to go with Microsoft versus Google versus Anthropic's Claude, as long as you're going with one and you have the infrastructure and the buy-in from your team to use it, it doesn't really matter which one you use because you will still get all the benefits you actually want out of it. So you're not going to have a differentiating factor or a moat around your business because you've decided to go with Anthropic versus going with OpenAI. So the key there is look for what is best for your business, find the problems that you essentially want to solve. And once you do that, use AI to layer on as a solution all those problems and fixes that you can do. Number two is about data and distribution. This is the biggest thing I try to get all of our clients to understand. It's that AI is a garbage in, garbage out. So what's really important here is to understand your own data hygiene, how you have everything structured, where your knowledge base exists now. Ingesting that in is absolutely critical because a stronger knowledge base, a stronger ability for a AI model, which is basically a probabilistic statistical model that's just looking for the right information to kind of generate, synthesize, and put out, the better the data you have, the better the outputs you're going to have. And as a marketer, that comes in every single way. It can come in how your marketing campaigns come out. It can go into how you're reaching different audiences. It can go into how you internally are creating actually assets, into how you're writing PR headlines. Now, obviously, there always needs to be kind of a human in the loop to make it, not a reduction to the mean, which a lot of these models are. But it's really going to be about your knowledge base, your data, and really powerful oil going into that engine, this AI engine, to produce and help, that vehicle of your business go as fast and as safe as possible. And the last piece, and we talk about this with our clients a lot as well, is that building your own AI or trying to custom build things to think that that's going to be a differentiating factor, that really isn't a moat anymore. In that when you lean into what big tech has built, the hundreds of billions and now cresting into the trillions of dollars, they have built the infrastructure. They have the best tools. So it saves you a lot of money to borrow instead of build and say, I'm going to use these great tech stacks and incorporate them into the stack that I have, because that's essentially going to be the best bet for my business. Spending all the time and capital and human resources to build your own proprietary models might not be the best idea. Now, granted, based on what your business is, there are ways that you can create SLMs, small language models, like really narrow focused pilots that are just great for your business. And I think that's a great way to lean in. But the reality is these tools exist, and you should start thinking about stacking as opposed to a catch-all solution. And I'll end with that. Many of our clients in the Fortune 500 stack different technologies on top of each other. So Microsoft Copilot could be a fantastic baseline that you use for all of your workforce to kind of upskill them holistically across the board, better at writing emails, better at making design decks, better at communicating, but it's basically going to lift the efficiency and capabilities of an entire organization. On top of that, you might want to add an Anthropic Claude Cowork or, a Claude API on top that can connect to your internal systems and then help with some of that back end synthesis. But again, that might be for more super users, for more of your developers, for more of your, tech savvy folks that stack on top of that initial baseline. But that is essentially where we are today in the world of AI. And it's essentially where we need to focus as brands and how do we get to that next step to realize again that there's not going to be a differentiating factor between the model we choose, do what's best for your business, understand that data hygiene and what you put into these models and systems is the quality that you will get on that backside when it comes out. And then most importantly, save the money, save the energy, save the time of trying to build everything yourself. Borrow and stand on the shoulders of giants to really get ahead in the world of AI. So with that, Mike, I'll pass it back to you. And thank you again for all your time.
Matt, thanks for that fantastic presentation and lots to dig into there. I'm sure a lot of the listeners who are tuning in live will have many questions and, how this all relates to their organization and where they're at and what the right next steps are. So with that, if you're listening in live, right in front of you, you have a Q&A box. Type your questions in for Matt. He will be joining us on the next live Q&A panel coming up in just a few minutes, and we'll do our best to get to as many of those questions as we can during that next half-hour panel.